Across the wind-swept plains of Britannia, a mist clings low to the ground, curling around ancient stones and silent fields. 2,000 years ago, these lands were wild, untamed, and sacred to the tribes who called them home. Among them were the Iceni, a proud people from the east, and from their halls a queen would rise, destined to shake the foundations of the greatest empire the world had ever known. Her name was Boudica. Boudica's story begins long before her rebellion, in a world where Celtic tribes ruled their lands with fierce independence. The Iceni were wealthy, renowned for their skilled horsemen and prized metalwork. Imagine gleaming gold torques, finely wrought weapons, and shimmering shields adorning their warriors. Their lives were bound by tradition, guided by druids and gods far older than Rome itself. Boudica grew up in this culture of pride and freedom. She was said to be tall and commanding, with long hair the color of fire. Her very presence marked her as a figure of awe, a woman born to lead. She married King Prasutagus, ruler of the Iceni, and together they had to navigate the ever-growing shadow of Rome. Rome had first invaded Britain under Julius Caesar, but it was Emperor Claudius who truly secured the conquest nearly a century later. The Roman legions came with their iron discipline, building roads, forts, and cities, binding the land in stone and law. Some tribes submitted, while others resisted. The Iceni chose a fragile peace. Prasutagus became a client king, allowed to keep his throne in exchange for loyalty and tribute to Rome. For his people it was a compromise to survive. For Rome it was merely convenient. But when Prasutagus died, this delicate balance shattered. He had hoped to secure his family's future by leaving his kingdom jointly to his two daughters and the Roman emperor. Rome, however, did not honor his will. Instead, they saw an opportunity and seized everything. The Iceni nobles were enslaved, their lands confiscated, and Boudica herself, a queen, a noblewoman, a ruler, was publicly flogged. Her daughters, still just children, were violated before her very eyes. The humiliation was absolute. Rome thought they had broken the Iceni, but what they had actually done was sow the seeds of a furious rebellion. Boudica rose from this abyss of pain and shame with a fire in her heart. She was no longer just a queen. She was the embodiment of vengeance. She summoned her people and they answered her call. The Iceni were not alone. The neighboring Trinovantes, already embittered by Rome's colony built on their lands, joined her cause. Other tribes followed, uniting under a single banner of defiance. The Druids called upon the gods of the old world. Sacrifices were made, and omens were read. Freedom itself was at stake. And at the center of it all was Boudica, standing upon her war chariot, her daughters beside her. She vowed that Rome's arrogance would be drowned in blood. The rebellion began at Camalodunum, the Roman colony that flaunted its power with a great temple dedicated to the Emperor Claudius. It was a hated symbol of conquest, and Boudica made it her first target. Her warriors swept through the city like a storm, burning it to the ground. The temple, once meant to glorify Rome, became an inferno, a pyre for Roman pride. From there, her army surged southward. Londinium, the bustling Roman settlement on the Thames, what we now call London, was next. The Roman governor, Suetonius, considered defending it, but he quickly realized he lacked the numbers. He made the difficult decision to abandon the city. Boudica's forces descended, and Londinium was reduced to ashes. The city of Verulamium, near modern-day St. Albans, fell next. Across the land, Roman settlers and soldiers were slaughtered without mercy. Entire towns were erased from existence. Ancient sources claim that nearly 80,000 Romans and their allies died in the uprising. To Rome, it was an act of unspeakable terror. But to the Britons, it was justice. Yet the Roman Empire was not so easily broken. Governor Suetonius, a hardened and strategic general, regrouped his legions in the west. He chose his ground carefully for the inevitable confrontation, drawing the Britons into a narrow valley with dense forests protecting his flanks. His soldiers, though vastly outnumbered, were a professional fighting force, trained for precision and discipline. Boudica's host was immense, a massive army of perhaps over 100,000, drawn from every tribe that dreamed of freedom. Families followed in their wagons, lining the rear of the battlefield as if victory was a certainty. They were there to witness the final liberation of their lands. Before the battle, Boudica herself rode in her chariot before her people. Her daughters stood with her, living symbols of her cause. Her fiery hair streamed behind her as her voice thundered across the field. She spoke of vengeance, of honor, and of a freedom that could not be surrendered. Her warriors roared in response, their voices shaking the very earth. Then the clash came. The Britons charged forward in furious, chaotic waves, but the Roman legion stood firm, an unyielding wall of iron. Shields locked, javelins, the pila, were cast with deadly accuracy, and the disciplined lines absorbed the fury of the charge. Step by step the Romans advanced, a methodical machine of war, turning the great horde into chaos. The wagons that had hemmed the Britons in became their own trap, preventing any chance of retreat. The slaughter was immense. Tens of thousands of Britons fell. Rome's cold, hard discipline had triumphed over raw numbers and passion. The rebellion was utterly broken in a single, devastating day. What happened to Boudica? Her fate is uncertain. Roman historians say she took poison, choosing death over the humiliation of being paraded in chains through Rome. Others believe she died of illness shortly after the defeat. Whatever the truth, her spirit remained unconquered. Rome crushed the uprising, but they never forgot her. To them, she was a savage queen, a formidable rebel who dared to defy the might of their empire. But to Britain, she became a legend, a woman who refused to kneel. Centuries passed, but her name lived on. In the Victorian Age, she was reimagined as a national heroine, and her magnificent bronze statue was erected in London, forever charging toward the Thames. Boudica is remembered not for her victory, but for her incredible courage. Against the greatest empire of her time, she raised her people and declared that freedom was worth dying for. Her story is not one of defeat, but of immortal defiance. Boudica's fire may have been extinguished on the battlefield, but her spirit blazes through history. She reminds us that even empires tremble before those who dare to resist. If her story moved you, imagine how many other queens stood against impossible odds. Join us here on Queens Who Ruled to hear their voices rise again. Subscribe, and let history's forgotten queens live once more. Thanks for watching.